For me, it's Friday. In the United States, it's a long weekend called Labor Day. And speaking of labor, we got lots of teachers, but this is a podcast hosted by myself, Stuart Brisgell. That's David Solomon. We bring you unfiltered conversations on a wide range of topics. Let me tell you, super wide. Our podcast is dedicated to express opinions, thoughts, experiences, ideas, and hear from a variety of perspectives and honest opinions. Rare. Join us as we dive into the latest news, pop culture, politics, and so much more. Ransom absurdity of modern life, like Chicago and New York and LA, baby, and deeper issues affecting society. The Rant Network, we got you covered. Sit back, relax. Don't worry. I promise I won't use the four-letter word too often. David, when we talk about the border crisis, you hear nothing from the left. You hear nothing from any of the news media channels, and everyone is elated with what's going on. Happy. The Texas is being filled up, but you know what? Not so fast. You have New York, Chicago, LA, and even Miami, Florida. What people are forgetting to understand is all these migrants need a job, but they're illegal. They can't get a green card and they can't get a social security number, so they're just illegal. And two, all their kids get to go to school because that's what everyone does. Lets kids go to school. And you know what? Paying for it. And you know what? Rules for us aren't the same rules for them. And I know David's going to get into the weeds on this one, but I want you to understand. My wife's classroom was 20 kids last year. Now it's 25. Why is that a big deal? She's a kindergarten class. She has 50 kids in a given day because it's a split class. Regular classrooms went from 32 to 42 to 50. Now, I don't know if you understand or remember when you went to school, but that many kids in a classroom is a recipe for disaster for many multitudes of reasons. Number one, you have a language issue called ESOL. English as a second language. You also have the financial burden put on the classroom. Hey, we've already discussed about 20 times that teachers are the least paid employees. If you're a brand new teacher, you're lucky to make $35,000 a year in the state of Florida. I don't know. Can you support yourself? I think you get paid that much working at Starbucks. At Starbucks, you get to ask for a tip with every single drink and get tipped out. Okay? So here we are, again, talking about the migrant crisis. And, even the mayor of New York is asking the federal government for dinero. David, you want to jump on this? Because I've already ranted.
So look, I got to tell you, so let's get into specifics about what's going on here and this is where Stuart is bringing about schools and this and that, and it's frightening. And I'll give you an example. So when Canada took in 25,000 Syrian refugees a number of years ago, we, the population, were told they get front of the line service. Medical care, education, all that stuff that we struggle with here in Canada, and with all due respect to Bernie Sanders, that's a whole other rant. But where we have to wait in line for a doctor, Syrian refugees were told that they get front of the line. They can go see a doctor whenever they want. And the kids, when they go to school, they will go to school wherever they want. Doesn't matter about what the rules are. And that upset a lot of Canadians. Taxpayers, people who've been living here their whole lives, who built from zero, understood that the refugees should get some sort of help and whatever. But to displace our kids, our families, that was wrong. All right, let's go to New York City and let's talk about what's going on in New York City with their 19,000 students going to school today, migrants, and not only filling classrooms, but overfilling and overspilling classrooms. Now, Stuart talked about his wife. My wife's a teacher. My mother's a teacher. I've known teachers my whole life. And I want to tell you something. When you get over a certain number of kids, the education, the amount of attention a kid can get diminishes dramatically. Forget kindergarten, any level. And yet here, the New York school system is basically told Too bad, so sad. You take all the migrants and be damn the kids. So you, the taxpayers in New York, that you're spending all this money on your children's education, whatever, sucks to be you. Their education will suffer. Now let's go to Chicago. Now, how many of you remember COVID? How many of you remember mandatory vaccinations? How many of you were told that if you weren't vaccinated, you couldn't come to school, that this? Well, let's fast forward to 2023, where suddenly those rules don't matter. Because in Chicago, if you're a migrant, you could go to school. You don't have vaccinations? Don't care. You don't have your health records? Too bad. You don't have immunizations? Don't matter. But if you're a Chicago resident with kids going to school and if you can't provide all that information for your kid by the middle of October, your kid's thrown out of the school. The Democratic Party loves the notion of trying to be the party for the migrants. But they're not, all they're trying to do is to create new voters for the Democratic Party at the expense of you, the citizen, your families. Your kids are now being impacted to go help these migrants. Now, I'm not insensitive, and Stuart's not, I'm sure, pretty much not insensitive. We're saying we shouldn't do anything for the migrants. But at what cost? You're telling me that we should put these kids into any school, regardless of their health condition, and we'll take it from there. We don't care. Our kids don't matter. We have an education problem in Canada, the United States, with literacy, mathematics, STEM. We have problems with kids post-COVID still dealing with social impact of not being in a school social situation, masking, the whole thing. And now, with migrants, you learn nothing from Canada. All you've done was say, we want to show the migrants that we're the Democratic Party, we're good people, but my citizens don't matter. And that is a problem, Stuart. And what you just said is now they're yelling at Mayorkas and they're yelling at them at not only for money, but they're blaming now the Democratic Party, the federal government, for causing this problem and yelling at Republican states, the red states in Florida and Texas and New Mexico and whatever, and for sending these migrants to them. It should be their problem. For decades, the people on the border have been dealing with this and screaming at the federal government. And the Democratic Party said, there's no migration problem. I don't know what you're talking about. You're a sanctuary city. What did you think was going to happen? You just wanted to be a sanctuary city to tell everybody, look how good we are? No, there was an impact. And the impact is going to be on your citizens. And if you don't mind that your kids' education will suffer, or that you're now a second-tiered citizen, Stuart, as far as I'm concerned, good for you. But now I understand why people are moving to Florida and to Texas and to get away from these idiot states, because the policies are not for the people. The policies are made to be voted in again.
David, what's more important is these people vote on issues that affect everyone.
Yep.
And, if you had polio, you have a mandatory polio vaccination, right? These kids that are coming in from all these countries, most of them are not vaccinated for polio, not for whooping cough, not from every single disease that's been eradicated from Western America, which is Canada, United States, and Mexico. And now we're introducing them into the classroom. Let me tell you something, David. I think that the politicians are getting caught. I think the policies are disturbing. And I think if people like us go out there and explain the problems, eventually they're going to learn. And unfortunately, people typically learn more when it directly affects them. And
Mm-hmm.
it's my belief that every mother and father that has a kid in a public school system that is already complaining about how they can't compete with charter and private schools is going to compete even less. Because for all those private kids with controlled class environments, just getting more expensive, wiping the middle class out of an elite school system, the grants are going away. Then you have the charter schools that have limited enrollment. So they're all being pushed into the public school system. Now, I don't know about you, but public school isn't quite the way that you and I remember it. These classes are, all being taught testing. They're not being taught how to learn. It's not about what the kids learn in a year. It's how they test 3 times a week. And these are the scores. So teachers can't teach. All they can do is test.
No,
And
but
we
still,
know from experience that teachers can't do this in classrooms with 30 to
you're
50
right.
kids.
You're
That's possible.
right. But you're 100% right about inside the classroom. I'm talking about the hypocrisy of these policymakers. Remember, the same people who shut your schools down, the same people who force students to wear masks, the same people who sat there and are now freaking out over COVID because there's another variant, are telling tens of thousands of kids
These
and their
are the
families,
same
we don't
people.
care.
These are the same people who don't call out China, who don't
No,
call out
you're right.
Russia.
You're 100% right. But I'm saying right now, because calling out China and calling out Russia, that's somebody else's problem. The people of New York City, the people in Chicago, this is your city. These are the elected officials that you brought in who promised you the star, the moon, and the sky. We will take care of you. Lori Lightfoot was thrown out of office in Chicago because look what she did. And Adams is in New York City and he's telling everybody, I'm going to save you. I'm going to protect you. And nobody can sit here and tell me, and these are new mayors. They're not COVID mayors, right? They replaced the COVID mayors. But your policymakers shut schools down because one kid had COVID. We had to freak out. Now you're letting in students unvaccinated, in all likelihood, could be carrying COVID. You simply don't care. You talked about immunizations and the whooping cough and all that. That's a whole other series of problems. So I don't understand the policies. Either you do
David,
care about
we,
the
we, we,
people.
we've never understood the policies, and they don't want us to understand the
No, they
policies.
do. No,
They
they
don't
want.
want you to. They want you to understand
Just
the
accept what I
word
say.
Inflation Reduction Act,
No,
and
no.
that's
Do
about
it.
reducing costs of
Listen.
medicine.
Do as I
They think
say.
that
Do as I say. Don't pay attention. I'm right. I'm the Democratic Party. I know what's best for you. You want to cede your possibility of having any influence. You've given the government full control of your life. And this is the thanks that they're giving you. After 2 years of incarceration with COVID and mask mandates and all this kind of crap, the way they're thanking you as a population is by putting your kids in potentially dangerous situations to help these migrants. Again, that's the wrong answer. And don't sit here and say that the Republicans bust them up there and they were caught with their pants down. New York and Chicago and San Francisco and all these other cities call themselves sanctuary cities. For not since yesterday, it's been a while. Therefore, where is your so called plan? Where's your plan to help the migrants? Stuart, as far as I'm concerned, words that mean nothing again by these famous Democrats that said, give me the power and I will fuck you over.
Oh wow! I told you we are going to be pottyless, David. I'm gonna take the last word and then rattle us down, David. I think we're concluding that the left just doesn't care what anyone thinks, and that's their claim to power. On
No,
that
I
note,
think I'm
guys,
no.
David,
I'm sorry. I think that the left doesn't care about the people that they claim to care for. That's the problem. They care for their votes, they care for their pocketbooks, they care for about getting rich. They don't care about making your life better.
David, on that note, that's all for today's episode. Thank you for tuning in and listening to the Rant Network. We hope you enjoyed the conversation, gained some valuable insight. Because if you didn't know this already, you're not in sight. We appreciate your support. We hope you join us again next week for more thought-provoking conversations, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, noon Eastern. In the meantime, don't forget to join us on social media, message us, PM us, catch us on all the vertical downloads for your podcast while you're hopefully doing something other than being on the toilet. All right, David, I'm going to say end it, baby.